My name's David Zimmerman. I'm the Customer Success Manager at Northstar MLS, and it's my pleasure to welcome Tricia Henchen, our Compliance Manager, here today to just give us some hot topics and a rules update kind of mid-year here as we navigate 2026. We're really excited to have her joining us here today and really just giving us some insight into the compliance, updates and some changes and some little tweaks that we've kind of been making over the course of the past few months here. So, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tricia. And again, if you have any questions, please submit those in the QA box down below.
Thank you, David. And hello, everybody. Thank you all for joining. I am super happy to be here with everybody and glad you are here to listen and learn. And like David said, very open to questions, questions at the end, but also at any point in time. We do have my contact information along with the rules email and the rules phone number. So if there's something that wasn't answered today and you really, really want to know, or maybe you're afraid to ask the question, please feel free to email myself or our rules department. Me, Sarah, or Justin will be there to help you guys. And again, the phone number for that too. So with that, let's just pop into this. So maybe everybody has seen that we have updated our North Star MLS policy. It is beautiful looking. This is the front page of it. Within that policy is our policy. So we baked in our previous policy into this. And the reason why I'm bringing this up now is because there are some minimal changes to it. This policy now really goes over exactly how the process works. So that way you're in more of an understanding how the process works if you read it, that is. And if you don't, that's okay because you can always reach out to us for that too. But there are a lot more definitions in there that were needed and are brought forth so you guys can understand exactly what things mean a little bit better. But with that being said, we do have not only the full policy manual online, but we do have some really great resources that go along with it, and that goes in conjunction with the policy manual. So if there are any questions, feel free to give us a call. Otherwise, when you have downtime, because none of you ever do, we know that. But if you ever do, feel free to pop in and check out the new policy manual. And then I'm going to jump right into this one too, because we get these questions a lot, especially right now. And this is a newer thing that is coming up more and more. As you all know, virtual staging, AI enhanced photos, and well, tours also, but more so photos are huge right now. There's a lot of questions around that. So I'm going to answer some of the main questions that we do get today. And again, feel free to send any questions or pop them in the Q&A if you have further questions through this. But one of the big ones we get is, can I virtually stage photos? And the answer is yes, you absolutely can virtually stage or use AI enhancement for your photos. Okay. We do have a best practice guidelines, and I'll kind of talk on that a little bit here in a moment. But yes, absolutely, if you want to virtually stage or AI enhance your photos, definitely do so. Always check with your broker on processes they may have in place. Another question we get is, can I use AI to paint the walls and or add flooring? Our best practice states that you probably should sway away from that, okay? Because you don't want to change any physical of the property. However, if you do choose to, again, checking with your broker first, if you do choose to do so, in our best practices, we do state that it is always best to add the altered photo and then right away after it an unaltered photo, or vice versa. You can say this is the unaltered photo and this is the altered photo. But with that being said, you want to make sure to put very clear disclosures. And where can you put those disclosures? We now do allow text on photos, and we allow text on photos for this very reason. Obviously, still no branding of any sort, but the text on photos is so that way if you do virtually stage or AI enhance your photos in any way, you can put that right on the photo now if you would choose to. That way ensures that it does reach out to third-party sites if you choose to share them out. So if you choose internet, yes, and you're allowing your photos and your listing to go out to other sites, if you put it on the photo, it will for sure be picked up. We do allow it in the photo caption, but just know that even though we allow that information to be syndicated out to other sites, not always do every vendor pick that up. It is up to the vendor to pick it up if they choose to. So just know that's one of the biggest reasons we did allow that now on photos. We want to make sure to allow compliance not only for us, but to keep you guys compliant with your state license law and ethics. And this way it ensures that you are, just in case those are not feeding out. But you can also put remarks in the public and or agent remarks too. So those are really important points to know. Disclosure is huge. So if you are going to do something that may change the appearance, even though we in our best practice guide say it is best not to, if you are choosing to, it would be best to disclose it saying, this is how it could look. Here's the before photo, and here's the photo of how it could look if I added paint. Here's the photo how it could look if I added flooring. But again, always check with your broker on that because claims of misrepresentation can happen and they can go to the state and they can go to ethics and they can go legally. So just be very, very careful in doing that. And with our best practice, it is at this time a best practice. It is not in policy. It is not one that we can for sure enforce, but we do send notices. So if something does come into us, we do make you aware that there was a concern and ask that you relook at your photos to make sure that they are truly depicting the property as it actually is. Again, we do not want to see any actual structural changes. Don't be taking out walls. Don't take out trees. Don't take out power lines. All of that kind of stuff is very misleading. So be very, very careful when doing any of that kind of stuff. And then on the other hand, we get other questions around photos and virtual tours, more so photos though. So some of these questions that we do get, and I know it's innocent questions, and I know people don't really think of it. However, we get the question a lot is, can I take a photo of a home that I'm taking my buyer through? Well, the answer is no, unless you get written permission from the listing agent or broker. And that there too is because that listing agent, that listing brokerage is the one that is under contract. They have the rights to do that and they have the rights to share it. And the seller will allow them to share those however they deem necessary. So some sellers may not want a certain room to be shown. They may not want a certain view to be shown. You as the buyer's agent may not know that. So always check with the listing agent before you go in and take photo or video and share it on any of your sites. Or even
Trisha,
just
can
take.
you, sorry to
Mhm.
cut you off. Trisha, could you also mention that also applies to, scanning the property for like floor plans, such as like using one of our tools, Cubicasa and stuff like that?
Yes, yes, and that's a great point, David. We do have Cubicasa for you guys, and that is available. It is a floor plan app that we do have, and maybe if we have time at the end, David can talk a little bit on behalf of that, which is a great tool. But there again, this is the listing agents under contract with the seller, so you do not want to be doing anything on behalf of that, even creating your own floor plans of a home that you do not have a listing contract on. So great point. Thank you, David. Um, can I share another agent's photos on my social media? Yes, if, okay, and this is a yes if you have the written permission from them to do that. You cannot just take somebody else's photos or listing and just share it without their approval. Okay. There again, the agent has the listing contract with the seller and they are told how exactly it is supposed to happen. Okay. And so if the listing agent or brokerage does give you the approval, that brings us to our next one. If they do, what you would have to do to be compliant to share that online is always give proper attributions back to that brokerage and or agent. So as far as using the photos, always make sure that the agent is the copyright owner. Okay, if the agent is the copyright owner and they took those photos and they give you the written permission, then you want to make sure that you're giving them photo courtesy of and then their name. If you're using their listing and they've given you the written permission to share their listing on social media sites, it will be the same thing. You want to do listing courtesy of, at least the brokerage name. But otherwise, brokerage name and agent name would be best. But always make sure you are giving the proper attributions back if you're going to share someone else's um, photos or listing on social media sites. That not only complies with us, but that is your state statute, and that also is ethics. Okay. And then that goes for yourself too. If you are sharing your own listings on your social media post, make sure you always have your brokerage branding on there. That is proper attributions, and that is something that does need to be shared throughout to be compliant with all three areas. With that, I'm going to pop into the next one. So some of the violations that we do see, and I won't go through all of these, I'll just pick out a few because I have some slides on some of them. Pending is our biggest one. What the pending one is when you put a listing into a pending status, you have a projected close date. That projected close date at that time, we give you a 7-day flag. So that way you know it's coming up or you need to change that. So what that is the projected close date isn't always updated as it's supposed to be. And it's past that date now. Our system does automatically find these. So once it sees that it's past that projected close date, it will automatically send out a notice. And it is just a notice. There's no fine to that. So when you see that, when you get that, please make sure you're either pushing that projected close date out or you close it. And the biggest thing to know on that is once you do that, give us a call or email us, even if it's just to simply say updated, fixed, anything like that. So we do know to close that notice out, because if we don't know to close the notice out, it could escalate to a fine, and we don't want that to happen. So um, just remember the projected close date on or even before. If you know it's going to be pushed out, go ahead and push that out. Otherwise, on the projected close date, if it closes that day, please make sure to get it closed out. Public remarks, that's another one that we do see quite often. And that's because people are still putting branding in there. But open house information is being put in public remarks too. We do have an open house section, and that's where all your open house remarks would need to go. So please make sure you're not putting open house or branding in public remarks. If you're ever in question on what is okay to put in public remarks, just give us a call or an email. We will look it over. Usually, if it's an email, it's really nice because then we can reply back with what may not be compliant. So feel free to send that in. We truly are here to help you guys. We do not want to send out fines or notices at all. One of these that is smaller, but it's still there is the commissions. Okay, so please, please, please make sure that you are not putting commissions at all in the MLS in any areas. That is against the lawsuit. If you guys are all familiar with, which hopefully you are, this happened a couple of years ago, and we did have to settle on a lawsuit for $418 million, and we are still actively in that settlement. So there cannot be any commissions within Northstar MLS. Okay. Late listings is another one that we have, but I will go over that in more full detail here in just a moment. And then I am going to just hit on the bedroom one real quick, the bedroom non-conforming. We have that one coming to us a lot more lately, and a lot of people ask us, what is a conforming bedroom? Okay, so it is very hard for us as Northstar MLS to give you a specific what it is. Okay, we have a very small guidelines that the state of Minnesota did give us. However, every county or city, depending on who the assessor is there that assesses these for tax purposes, every city or county is different. Okay, so they're going to be the ones that we are going to refer you to ask, because some of them do allow egress windows, some of them do not. Some of them say a second exit, some of them, all different guidelines. So in something like that, we are going to refer you back to the city or county. If they do allow it, then we will allow it. So just know that. And please know that we are not here to just fine everybody. We really do send 99% of these as just a notice. And first offense is typically waived. Second offense, we usually reduce. And by third offense, if you don't know by then, well, then we're probably going to make that stick. But still give us a call, just because there are things that do happen, situations happen, and we know that you have a lot on your plate with buyers and sellers. And so going into that, Um, this is going to lead us into our late listings too. So that's why I think this is very important for everybody to know. North Star MLS does have a mandatory service area. Our mandatory service area means that if you take a listing within one of these areas, which is all of Minnesota, all of North Dakota, and then the counties within Wisconsin are Buffalo, Pepin, Polk, Pierce, and St. Croix. If you take a listing within that area, you have 2 business days to enter that into the MLS. Okay, so again, if you take a listing and it is active, you have 2 business days to get that into the MLS. But things to know for that is if it's new construction, under construction, which is usually new developments, if it is a commercial property, or if it is for rent, not for sale rental, but for rent. Those do not have to be put into the MLS. Okay. You can put them in, but they do not have to. So they do not follow the 2 business day rule, but everything else does. And with that brings us into our late listings. And we do see late listings quite often. And my first ask before I go into any of this is if anybody receives a late listing fine, please, 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 before changing any contracts, before changing any dates or doing anything on the MLS, please give us a call so we can talk through it. Because it can be as simple as, hey, this happened. We didn't mean for it to happen. We as the MLS are going to say, okay, you know what? We understand. Don't change anything. We're going to chalk it up to a learning lesson, or we're going to chalk it up to a situation that happened, and we're going to close it out. Okay. So please don't change anything. Give us a call before changing anything, and then we can determine the best course of action. But some of the reasons why we're seeing these happening is because there's sometimes misunderstanding on what your list date is versus what your signature date is. And these are really important to know, and they can be quite confusing. So you guys do take the listing contract and you have your listing contract starts on X date and expires on Z date. Okay. So the day that it starts is technically your list date. Okay. But then you have your signatures. So let's just say you have it signed today, but you start your list date 5 days from now. Okay. So you'd have 2 business days from that 5 day. So I don't even know what the date would be at that. Let's just say August 6th. You would have 2 business days from August 6th to get that listing into the MLS. At the very least in a withhold status. Okay. But now let's reverse that. Let's say you put today as your contract date, your list date, okay? But the sellers cannot sign until let's just say August 3rd. Okay? Even if one seller signs today but the other one does not sign until August 3rd, August 3rd now is when that contract is active and started. So for the MLS, you will use that August 3rd date or 2 business days within that August 3rd date. So again, whatever is going to be last, whatever happens last there. So again, if it's the list date happens last, that's what you're going to use. But if signatures are obtained last, that's what you're going to use for your list date in the MLS. Okay. And the other thing that people get a little bit confused on is they leave it in an incomplete status instead of putting it in withhold. Well, the incomplete status is still, when you go from incomplete to active, that is going to flag that as a late listing because it's going to look like it was put in late, and all your days on market are going to track from that date. So just remember, if you actually have a withhold form, you want to make sure that the listing goes into a withheld status. That withheld status is going to take away all those days on market for however long it's been sitting in withhold. So if you have it in withhold for 30 days, your start date, your days on market are not going to start until that contract is or until that listing is active. So always remember that. And I'm sure there's probably questions in there, and I can definitely answer them at the end. But this is one that we see a lot. I really want to just reiterate how important it is to get your listings in on time within the 2 business days. And if you are unsure, or if you had a situation that comes up and you know it's going to be late, please just give us a call. If you know it's going to be late, it's okay. Tattletale on yourself if that's what you want to call it, but we will work with you on that. I promise you that. And then that takes us into the withheld listings. So withheld is a status that you guys can use. Always ask your broker. Some brokers allow you to, some brokers don't. The withheld status was created initially, so that way if the sellers aren't ready to go on the market because they need to clean the property, they have a family emergency, photos are still needed, any of that kind of stuff, that's what withheld was initially meant for. However, you can use withheld listings for your office exclusives. This is one you want to check with your broker on if you guys are allowed to do office exclusives. But office exclusives, what that means is you have your listing contract and you have it in a withheld status because the seller's not ready for it to go to the rest of the MLS or online. Okay, so during that time as of an office exclusive, you can talk about it within your brokerage to your brokerage agents and their clients. Okay, that is an office exclusive, and there's no public marketing at that time. Always remember too that if you have it in a withheld status, you want to keep your expiration date up to date. People forget about that when it's in a withheld status. So let's just say you did a short contract, but now you want to extend it out. Make sure that you update your expiration date. Otherwise, it will automatically expire off of that. But also, if you keep a listing in a withheld status and it sells, please make sure to either mark that as sold, go into active pending and closed. Otherwise, you want to just do a withheld delete to make sure that is off, just in case there's another listing that is going to need to be put on. Maybe the buyers now have turned around and want to sell it right away. So those are some of the important things to know with the withheld listing, but always, biggest thing is always make sure you have an active listing agreement anytime you're putting something into the MLS, unless it's in an incomplete status, and we can talk about that a little more. And please, no public marketing during that time. Which then kicks us into the clear cooperation policy, which you may have more questions on after this, and hopefully I'll hit all the points for you here. Clear cooperation policy does state that if you take a listing and it is an active listing contract, and again, remember for clear cooperation policy and our 2 business day rule, commercial, for rent, and new construction to be built or new developments are excluded. Okay, everything else is included, including lots and land. So if you take a listing and you publicly market it within 1 business day, that would need to go into the MLS as either coming soon or active. Coming soon, you can do all the marketing you want, but please make sure, even on the sites that are on Facebook, they're the off-market sites, you feel it might be a private site, but other people other than your brokerage can see that. That's not a private site. That is still a public site for everybody else to see. And it doesn't matter if there's no address, it's still a violation if you're publicly marketing the property. So please make sure that you are getting your listing in within 1 business day of publicly marketing. Okay. Some of the key points to know with the clear cooperation policy is even though there's no public marketing during that time, it is okay to do a one-to-one broker to broker communication. And what that means is you can talk to one person outside of your brokerage that you know possibly had a buyer. So maybe that you had a conversation with them before, now you have it under contract and you want to let them know, hey, I'm under contract with them now. I know you had a buyer. Feel free to share that information with them and let me know if you want to do a showing. Okay, the difference with us and NAR's policy says there are no showings. However, North Star MLS did put it into policy that if it is a one-to-one communication, and that means one-to-one, not one to several, it means one-to-one communication, we would allow that to be shown. Okay, and that goes for if an agent comes to you and says, hey, I heard you have this listing available. Can my buyers come in and see that? As long as it was a one-to-one communication, then yes, that is okay. And I know people are asking the question on how many can I tell as a one-to-one? And I have talked to NAR about that. And NAR says to keep it in the spirit of clear cooperation, it would be a one-to-one. So that means you're not saying one to one to one to one on each individual basis. You're telling one person. Okay. When it does come to us as North Star MLS, so if this is sent to us, please know we do have to have proof of the possible violation. Whether it's a screenshot of the social media post, a sign on the yard, the emails, any of that kind of stuff. Please know if that comes to us, then we do have to wait 1 business day from the day that we get that, and then we do send that. Okay, and so always make sure to have proof of that. It is all confidential, so it's confidential on both ends. It's confidential on how we proceed forward and what we find out, and it's confidential on who sent it to us. So please, I know people get very upset if we don't tell them what's happening or if we don't tell them who sent it, but know that everything that comes to us as far as any concerns that come in, it is all confidential. And we absolutely cannot send it without proof of the possible violation. So, with that being said, we're going to keep on going because we have lots to talk about, and I want to make sure we get time for questions at the end. So, I know you guys are probably thinking, why am I bringing up statuses? Okay. And they seem very simple, but there's some key points that people tend to miss, and I seem to get a lot of aha moments. Um, after we discuss this. So let's just kind of go through some of these and some of the more important ones that they're all important, but the more important ones that we get a lot of. Okay, so as far as active, active means it is active and it's available for showings. If you cannot do showings within a 24-hour period, it would have to go into temporary not available for showing. Okay, not just blocking out showing time. That doesn't comply with North Star MLS policy. So if it's more than 24 hours, then you would have to move it into temporary not available for showing. We did just get that passed though for rent properties because we know that Minnesota statute has changed a little bit. So for rent properties, it would have to be available within the 72-hour period. So anything that's not for rent, it would have to be available within 24 hours. Anything that is for rent, it would have to be available within the 72 hours to be compliant with Minnesota state statute. So when you move that into temporary not available for showing, that means all of your marketing comes down. That means all of your days on market stop. Okay, so just remember there's no showings, there's no marketing, there's no days on market that are accumulating during that time. But the reason I want to bring this one up even more so is let's say you have an active purchase agreement on the property. And this is something that a lot of people are unaware of. During that time, regardless of whether it's active or in a temporary not available for showing status, you do need to show that contingency. Okay, so make sure that when the purchase agreement is in place, you have your contingency showing, regardless of whether it's active or temporary not available for showing. One of the questions we get on contingencies is what if I have more than one? We always say check with your broker, but what we see happening is a lot of times people will start with the first contingency that's going to expire first. And then after that one does, they'll move it to the next and move it to the next. Okay. Canceled. This one does get a little confusing for people because they feel that they can just cancel and relist on the MLS. And you can. However, canceled means the contract is canceled. So if you're going to cancel a listing, that means your contract is canceled. That means you get a new contract and put a new listing on, even if it is done all in the same day. Okay. So that's why it seems like an easy thing, but I just wanted to make everyone aware that when it is canceled, that means the contract is canceled, and then you do the new contract and put that on. The only time that we typically will make an exception for that is if we had sent a notice and maybe the property was in the wrong property type and you need to get it into a new property type. Okay, so therefore your contract is still going to be active because we're just correcting an in-office thing as far as maybe it was put into the property type of lots and land and it should have been in single family or vice versa. Closed, that's a pretty easy one. That means your status is closed. Coming soon, and I will talk more about the coming soon status, but you do have the coming soon option, and it can stay in the coming soon status for up to 21 days, but we'll go into that a little bit more. And we do have a comp sold option. Comp solds are put in by buyers agents only after the sale. Incomplete, think of incomplete as your scratch pad. That's where you're putting listings during the time that you're preparing them. Okay. Maybe your listing contract isn't signed yet, but you know you're going to get it. So you want to get a jump start on that. Okay. Go ahead and put it into the incomplete. Just know that incompletes do purge after 21 days. And incomplete is not a status that's going to keep you compliant with the 2-day policy. So if you have it in incomplete, you want to put your listing into either withheld, active, or coming soon status to be compliant with the 2 business day policy. Pending means that the listing is now pending and or the sellers do not want any more showings. So during this time, if the sellers direct you that they don't want any more showings, you can do either temporary not available for showing or you can do pending, okay? Depending on what is best fit for you there. So always talk with your broker on which status may be the best for you during that period of time. But just know that if you put it in pending or temporary not available for showing, no showings are happening. And then if you need to, you can always move it back into an active type status. But if you move it into active and there's still an active purchase agreement, even if that purchase agreement is going to be canceled, it does still need to show a contingency on there and in the status. You can put it in the remarks. Also, be very careful on what you're putting in remarks. Talk to your broker about what you can because you don't want to put confidential information of why that might be canceled. However, you can add that, sellers are going to accept backup offers, but always make sure in an active status with a purchase agreement, even if it is in the process of being canceled, the contingency still needs to be on there as at least of other. Um, and then we did go through the withheld, so we don't need to go through that anymore. And I'm sure there's a ton of questions on that, and I will be happy to answer those coming up. So as far as coming soon is a status that you can use, and a lot of people use this to get the hype going. They want to get it out there, get people seeing the property. And during that coming soon time, you can market that all you want. You can send out your emails. You can do any of that kind of stuff. You can do your virtual tours, but you cannot do showings. Okay. That is the thing with coming soon. There are no showings during that time. So you want to make sure that you are not showing the property and you are not going to try to get into the property earlier than that time. You can't do open houses during coming soon. Okay. None of the type of open houses, showings, any of that stuff is allowed during a coming soon status. This can stay in coming soon up to 21 days. Um, we do get the question a lot, and it can go either way, back or forth. So let's just say that you have it for the full 21 days and the sellers on day 14 are ready to go active. That is okay. As long as you have something from the sellers saying they want to go active early, it is okay to change that date. Okay. What we ask though, as a best practice, is if you're going to change that date, please contact anybody who has a showing scheduled so they can get in earlier if needed. Maybe they want to keep that date. Maybe that's what works for their buyers. But then they have the opportunity to come in early if you're moving it early. And the same goes for, let's just say you put the date for 14 days out, and now all of a sudden they're like, you know what? Things happened. We need the full 21 days. Again, it is okay to do that. Make sure you get something from the sellers in writing. Go ahead and change that date, but let anybody know who has a showing scheduled that you're going to be pushing that date out because of unseen reasons needed. Um, when you do put that into coming soon, or even an active status, when a listing is on the MLS as an active or coming soon, and let's just say you want to cancel and relist, you would not be able to put it back into a coming soon status for 90 days or more. Or let's just say that it sells. Okay, well, then it can go back into a coming soon status. But if you are with the same broker and you cancel and relist, it cannot go back into a coming soon status. Okay, so hopefully that covers most of the questions, but if there are more, we can talk about those. But actually, one more thing on the coming soon, I do want to talk about the dates, people get a little bit confused with the dates. So on the form, which I know we're going to have a little bit of a update to the form, and I'm not sure if that's ready yet, but I know it's coming and it's going to clarify these dates a little bit more. But as you see the form right now, there's a listing contract date, which is truly your listing contract date, and then the availability date. The availability date is the date that it is going to move from coming soon to active. So that means it's going to be available for showing. So just know that when you're filling out that form, the listing contract date is exactly what you see on your contract for the listing contract date. Your availability date is when it is going to go live. It's going to move from coming soon to active, and our system will automatically do that for you. And on that, I am going to end it because I see quite a few questions. And I know there's going to be maybe some other things that need to be discussed, but I want to give David a moment too to jump in about the floor plan if he can. So